Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Basu and Godin Notebook Playoff Edition, Tuesday edition. We're April 22nd. I'm Marc-Antoine Godin in Montreal with Arpin Basu in Washington, following Game 1 of the first round. You were there, my friend. What did you think of the game?
Do I just go on a soliloquy for the entire podcast and just
No, please try to do something different today.
It would be that's it exactly. I shouldn't stick to my brand, but my big takeaway from the game is that the Capitals missed an opportunity. The Canadiens came out for that game, and Caden Gooley equated it to how he felt before his first NHL game. Mm-hmm. He said it was the same feeling. Didn't know what the speed of the game was going to be like. Didn't know what the physicality was going to be like. It took about 3 minutes for Tom Wilson to show him how the physicality was going to be like when he kind of fumbled the puck behind his own net, showing the nervousness, and then Wilson made him pay for it by plowing into him. The Capitals were all over the Canadiens physically, territorially, scoring chance-wise. They had every advantage, and the Canadiens looked every bit the part of the youngest team in the NHL. Inexperienced, all the narratives that were coming into it, all the narratives that Carberry was trying to dispel about the Canadiens, Spencer Carberry, who, as an aside, as a writer, it's going to be very difficult to not quote Spencer Carberry every single day. Martin St. Louis has found his match in terms of a quotable coach. So this is like an all-time series in terms of quotable coaches. But
he's in John Cooper's territory also.
He's big time in the sense that, so this quote I'm about to tell you about, I typed it out. The quote was 258 words long. I was like, this quote's really good. I unfortunately can't even come close to using all of it because it would take up basically, a quarter or a fifth of my story would be that quote. Anyhow, so prior to the game, I checked it out and the Capitals, remarkably, not only did they have 91 points last season, just like the Canadiens, not only did they reach the playoffs on the final game of the season, just like the Canadiens, not only did they have a negative goal differential, just like the Canadiens, they had the exact same record as the Canadiens last season. Wins, losses, overtime losses, all the same. They were the Canadiens a year ago.
Yeah.
And so, given that, I asked Carberry after the morning skate, I was like, seeing as you were quite literally in their shoes last year, what can you take from your experience last year to use against them this year, being now in the shoes of the Rangers against the Capitals? And he gave a great answer. He was just like, the one thing is that we had a lot of momentum. We entered the playoffs feeling really good about ourselves. We thought we could beat the Rangers. If you had asked me a year ago prior to the series, do you think you could beat the Rangers? My answer would have been unequivocally yes. And then in game 1, what the Rangers did is they took that belief away. They just took it away. And I went back and looked at that game, and I don't know what the run of play was like in the first period, but much like the Canadiens, the Capitals survived the first period. And then in a span of a little over 2 minutes in the second period, the Rangers pumped 3 goals in and made it 3-0. And that was it. Belief gone. And so he said, what we have to do is what the Rangers did to us last year. We have to go into game 1 and chip away at their belief because they are riding high. They have a lot of positive energy right now. They have a lot of momentum. Frankly, he didn't say this, but frankly, a lot more momentum than the Capitals had, who kind of limped into the end of the season because they'd clinched for so long ago. We got to chip away at that belief. And ultimately,
that's not what happened.
That's not what happened at all. In fact, they won the game, but if anything, they reinforced the belief because the Canadiens come away from that saying, we had a terrible first period. We looked like a bunch of children on the ice. Second period, we kind of recovered somewhat, played it more even. And in the third period, we dominated and we got to overtime and we were one shot away from winning this game in what was far from a perfect game. And the Canadiens, I think we would agree, need to play perfect games to win this series. And
Well,
they didn't do that in game one, and they still had a chance to win it. And so I think, if anything, their belief grew stronger as a result of this game, even though they lost.
Well, actually, they played a game that's exactly on brand with the way they played the whole year, or at least since Christmas.
Since Christmas,
starting off slow and then ultimately coming back, keeping their best attacks and their best period for the third, and rallying, never stopping to believe in themselves. That was pretty much them, and it was just magnified because of the bigger moment and how heavy the Caps, came on them yesterday in the first period. I mean, there's nothing surprising about the way that the Capitals started the game. I think that the Canadiens were ready for that too. They expected it, but I'm just looking at. I remember once Josh Anderson talking about how he could be so dominant physically in certain games, and he said, it's just hard to do it nonstop. And I was looking at that Caps team. And I was thinking, well, could they play nonstop like this throughout the whole series? It's possible, but if they did, man, they would deserve to win that playoff round, no doubt about it. It lasted half of the game, and then from the second period, it started to come down a little bit. And at some point in the second period, there was just Ovechkin that was hitting. The other ones had already scaled it back a little bit, and by the third period, it was gone. So I think that the minute that the physical pressure that the Capitals are bringing comes down a little bit, the Canadiens need to pound. Yes, they need to match the Capitals' physicality, or at least their forecheck, and be able to establish the forecheck the way that the Capitals did in the first period. But as soon as the physical advantage that the Capitals have, they tend to not use it to the full extent. The Canadiens need to grasp that little extra time and space that's given to them and make the most out of it. If they want to win, yes, it's going to go through Samuel Montembeault, but it's going to go through that little bit of time and space that the Caps can give them. Because you saw, after in the first period, guys like Hudson, for example, was totally handcuffed, couldn't do anything with the puck. But as soon as there started to be a little bit more room on the ice and guys could actually make plays and break out the puck more comfortably, the game started to shift. So it's taking advantage of what's given to them but by the Capitals. And in that sense, I feel as though, yes, they lost the first game, but it's not lost at all for them.
No, and when you consider the fact that the Gouli-Hudson pairing, I mean, again, Carberry went into great detail about the Canadiens, and one of his biggest takeaways and one of his biggest fears entering the series was just how effective the Suzuki line was with Gouli and Hudson behind them. That group of five, he said that they have it as the best line in the league since Four Nations, which it makes sense. It tracks, it's so. But considering three of the guys that in that group of five were playing their first ever playoff game, and it showed for much of that game for all three of them. Slavkovsky, actually, no, I shouldn't say that, because the goal that Suzuki scored, I think, was a big result of Slavkovsky creating that chaos in front of the net. That pile of humans that Suzuki smartly outweighted and waited and moved to get into an open net, basically, was largely because Slavkovsky was there. So he deserves credit for that, but generally didn't have a very sharp game, let's say.
No, a bit underwhelming.
Yeah.
The other two adjusted, though. Hudson and Gouli adjusted.
And I think Slavkovsky on that play was also an adjustment. Like, okay, if I'm having trouble handling the puck, I got to go do this. And he did that. It made a difference. He deserves credit for that. Yeah. So, but three of those five guys were playing their first playoff game. So again, this was an opportunity to take advantage of what Carberry himself considers the best group of five in the league since Four Nations and neutralize them. to some extent, which they did for 45 minutes of that game, or 50 minutes even of that game. And really, it took. I think the Canadiens' power play looked actually decent. The goal itself wasn't a result of their power play creating and being like and causing the Capital, but I thought they looked okay for the opportunities that they got. But it took a bounce to get the Canadiens to wake up. I mean, if you look, Natural Stat Trick has like a running kind of Corsi meter on their site. And if you look at it from that goal onward, so it's a line. It's basically a line graph. And it's in the Capitals' favor, definitely in the first period. End of the second, it started to go towards the Canadiens' favor, but then start of the third, back up towards the Capitals' favor. Caulfield scores that goal on the power play, and it's a straight shot down. Like, it's basically like the Canadiens got all the momentum from that point on. So
I like the power play.
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was good. It was a positive. And even that goal, yes, it was a lucky bounce, but when Laine took that pass, he didn't just fire a shot on goal to score. He was putting a shot to an area. Like, he was trying to get a tip, or it was kind of a shot pass. So yes, it was a lucky bounce, but if Laine had just thrown like a typical one-timer on net, that bounce doesn't happen. Like, he kind of realized that, and this is kind of a thing. Like, his one-timer is not sharp right now. Like, we talked about it already, but it's not. Mm-hmm. Logan Thompson made the one save in the first period off a one-timer, but that wasn't his most violent shot that we've seen. Anyhow. But from that point on, I mean, that gave the Canadiens all the confidence they needed. And so it's considering 60% of their most dangerous grouping played more than 2/3 of the game basically on their heels. It's hard not to see this as an opportunity missed by the Caps. Yes, they're up 1-0. Yes, they have, they held on to home ice advantage, but the Canadiens are going to need to make some adjustments going into game 2. But I think the Capitals need to realize that they had the Canadiens at their worst and did not even come close to putting them away. Like, I mean, Sam Montembeault deserves a lot of credit for that, but still, if I'm in the Canadiens dressing room, I see this as being like, wow, we played just about as poorly as we could have played for a big chunk of that game, and we still could have won in overtime.
Yeah.
If we start not even on time, but just closer to on time, like, if we just start like,
yeah, but at the same time, I mean,
we can do it.
Their lack of experience is not going to go away just after one game, though. I mean, you say it's a missed opportunity for the Capitals. I hear you. I understand what you're saying, but it's not as though all of a sudden after game 1 they're on par, and they're not on par with experience, but they're not wondering what it's like. They're not going into the game being like, I mean, Gouli was like, I had no idea what to expect. Like, this is Caden Gouli. Like, this is like, this is not just some green rookie who doesn't know what he's doing. Like, this is like a borderline young veteran on this team where he's entering the game not knowing what to expect. Yeah. That's gone. Like, that feeling, the whole thing of Marty saying, you need to practice that. You can't practice that feeling. You need to live it. Mm. Well, they've lived it. Not for long. It's only one game. I agree with you. It doesn't erase their lack of experience, but it erases that feeling. Right. That feeling of unknown, and that feeling of, I feel like they were timid going into that game because they were like, and the Capitals encouraged that timidness because they were hammering them all over the ice, and it was so foreign to them that they looked shell-shocked. I don't think that's there anymore. Yes, they're going to have a lack of experience. Yes, the Capitals definitely have an advantage there, but their biggest advantage was that timidness, was that version of the Canadiens team coming out for the first period, not knowing what to expect and looking every bit like it. That's gone.